2017 marks the 10-year anniversary of the Magpul PMag. This whole thing started in Colorado in basically a basement with a simple rubber loop that went over the bottom of the magazine to help it extract from the issue magazine pouches at the time. And about 5 years later, the company started to grow and they started to look at magazine enhancements. So the first things we saw in 2004 timeframe were the enhanced self-leveling follower. We saw the Ranger plate and the L plate, and we saw the mag level system, which was originally incorporated into the USGI magazine. So you see those enhancements in the very first sample on our inception wall, which is the USGI magazine, which were actually made by the founders. Every single one of those had the window popped in by the founders. At that time, they realized there were some limitations with the aluminum USGI magazine body. So the denting that's possible with feed lips, sidewalls, things like that. The geometry, which was a compromise from day one, and even further compromise was kind of the dog leg curve to get 30 rounds into it after the initial 20 rounds straight. That could not be solved with followers alone and any kind of add-ons. So they realized that they had to do something different if they wanted to improve magazine performance even further. This time they didn't have any materials that they knew that they could work with in order to do that, but while working on the CTR project, they sampled I think about 40 or 50 different types of materials, different polymers that they were going to use to be able to injection mold the CTR stock. And during that, they came across a set of materials that were quite interesting and finalized on a material that had some properties that they thought made it entirely possible to do a polymer magazine. They weren't the first guys to try a polymer magazine, but this material made it possible to do one that was correct. And so what we have here, very quickly, the first Gen 1 PMag prototypes were figured out. The round stack geometry and everything was figured based on optimized stack geometry and presentation angles and reducing the energy that's stripped from the bolt carrier during the feed cycle. All these things went into that first prototype, and this is one of those first prototypes. You can see from the soot that's actually on the top of that, that was the first live fired prototype that was a printed PMag prototype. From there, the investment was made in a mold package, and this is one of the very first untextured shots that came off of out of the presses. Obviously there's some tweaks and changes that get done with any of the injection molded products before they go live, but this is one of the very first. So we had optimized constant curve geometry that we do some actually tricky things that most other folks still haven't caught on with as far as how that's positioned. The new presentation angle that's optimized over the USGI, which requires a lot of other things to happen in order to even make it work. And then optimizing follower geometry, contact points, guide ribs, things like that that are basically covered in all of our IP as far back as the Gen 1 PMag. From there, some of the early events you may remember, in order to get a little bit of attention for the original design, of course the USGI magazine doesn't like to be run over, and you see Drake Clark in his truck out back behind Erie, Colorado, driving over the PMag. That was actually never intended to be distributed, and it was just kind of an internal thing with kind of messing around behind the shop, but that kind of became an internet sensation at that point, and went all over, and now you see quite a few folks driving over various things as a way to prove that they're durable. In any case, 2007 was the commercial release of the PMag, so that's out there. During this time frame, we're also looking at a 20 round. The original one was straight, they went back and forth between straight and curved. The initial PMag could have been, 20 round PMag should have been curved for best function, but most folks wanted a 20 for tradition's sake. And in fact, we found that the performance was so much better on a curve that when we went to the Gen M3, we went back to a curved geometry. But in any case, there's that very first 20-round curved prototype. You also see some translucent materials. So there's translucent materials as far back as 2006 that we started messing with, 2007, and those continue all the way up to the present timeline. We've tried, I think, about 48 different categories, not just material types, but different categories of materials in translucents. And the bottom line on translucents for us is we have quite a few different translucent magazines that we've run through testing. And the reality is, with the translucent materials, there's always some kind of sacrifice that compromises performance to be less than what a Magpul PMag is, and so we've not released a translucent Magpul PMag. We've tested everybody else's, we've tested our own material attempts, and the reality is they just don't do the same things that our core materials, especially with our latest advances, do. So that's why we don't have a translucent PMAG yet, so we'll see. But in any case, the PMAG started proliferating, the PMAG started going to war. Here's one that was with some ODAs, with an ODA in Operation Iraqi Freedom, around that 2007 time frame. Around that same time frame, we started messing around with colors for the first time. There were quite a few different ones. The original Magpuls, there was some color coding based on, hey, dummy rounds, blanks, frangible, all kind of stuff with the original, that kind of toned down into the existing colors that we have today. But they played with some of that with the actual PMAG itself. So we had blue bodies, we had orange bodies, we had, you know, all kinds of the rainbow of colors that pretty much covers. It's quite a spectrum. What you see on the wall here, in totality of all the samples, is about 20% of what we have of the historical kind of samples of what happened with the PMAG through time. But here's just a brief sample of that. So around that time, we learned a lot of things with the first PMAG, and you see we started on the MREV, or what is now the M2 PMAG, and has existed once it was released into its current form to the current day. Figured out a lot of things about materials, some other stuff on manufacturing process that helped it to be stronger even with the same material, and those changes all got figured into the MREV. Prototypes here, 2009, the MREVs hit the street. Around this time, we're also working on the EMAG. The EMAG was a result of 416 compatibility requirements, so also 416 magwell. The Brits wanted a magazine that was lighter for the SA-80. The existing HK magazine that weighs about 8 ounces and also had some durability problems because of the steel, was somewhat malleable, base plates issues. It was actually stopped use in US SOF basically very shortly after its fielding. They wanted a replacement for that. They were mostly concerned about lightweight and SA-80 magwell compatibility, so we underwent that program and released the EMAG. The same time we were actually working with that with NSWDG. Those guys were looking for something for their 416s, which has the same magwell as the SA-80, and so the EMAG is what was the result of that. You also see there's one of the unicorns up there. A lot of people have asked about that guy over the years. Quad stack technology. So yes, we have quad stack IP, and we have a quad stack 60-round magazine from back in the day. But very early on, we figured out that quad stacks were unstable to a certain extent with rifle ammunition, and so that was kind of set on the drawing board for a while until we figured out how we could make that work. Let's see. All right, some of the stuff, the very first AICS magazine that we started playing with, this is just a printed prototype. We decided not to move forward with it at the time. We started the OEM programs. Those are up here. PMAG 30 Evo. So that was, the Evo was the bridge between the MREV and the M3. So some of the technologies that we played with there, trying to figure out some new ways to organize the inside of the magazine, different presentation angles, different manufacturing techniques, all those got worked into the Evo. Evo was never really released. We also have, there's a ton of translucent prototype Evos because we were still messing with translucent materials at the time. Around this time, 2010, with the EMAG, we get the official adoption. You have one of the Union Jack EMAGs right here for the UK MOD. Shows that contract's in there. That was our first official, no kidding, full military adoption by a significant NATO ally. So we had 1.1 million EMAGs with that contract. We delivered those in just a few months, well ahead of schedule, and continued marching on from there. They still have about half of those magazines in service to this day, 7 years later. All right, moving forward. 2011, of course, 2009, the EMAG comes out. NSWDG is running that magazine. 2011, we have the Bin Laden raid. All the 416s on that raid force were fed by EMAGs, and this is one. Of course, all the materials from that raid are a very, very close hold, but this is actually an EMAG that was used by one of the gentlemen who was on the Abbottabad raid with this NSWDG. And so we have that magazine and another magazine out there, but those magazines were used by him in Afghanistan, not particularly on that raid. Like I said, all those materials are very, very close hold. Around this time, we'll also start working with LWRC. They're looking for an optimum way to feed the 6.8 round. So we designed basically a magazine around the round stack to optimize for the 6.8. Allows a little longer cartridge overall length, which is ideal. They built a gun around it. That is the printed prototype, and you see the release just a little bit further here. PMag 30G, of course the G36, we start to support that, and around this same time we have the USMC adopting the HK416 in the form of the IAR. The IAR having that 416 mag well, there's an issue with M2 magazine compatibility, and that starts to rear its head. It's just a 85 thou or 100 thou difference basically in the front ledge of the magazine or the magazine well. One of the two has to change, and we ran into a compatibility issue, so we start working on the Gen M3 to take all of the geometry of the EMAG, which actually comes up flawless in a lot of government tests. It's just slightly better than the M2, the original M2, which has come along since then as well. But the EMAG geometry was pretty well optimized for just about anything, and all the platforms that were tested with that, 100% flawless reliability, no magazine-related failures with as far back as 2011 with the testing that was done with that by third parties. So we take that geometry, tweak it just a little bit. We add all the features of the Gen M3, the dot matrix, the improved slimmer floor plates, better texture, over insertion stop, which help with full weapon drops and things like that. That gets all worked in. We get some prototypes going here. Here's a printed prototype, and there's a molded prototype. That program starts in 2011. We move forward. Late 2012 is the release of the Gen M3. At that point, we rebadge the MREV to the M2, and it becomes the MO magazine. We stop shipping the dust and impact covers with those. That's always been a kind of a source of questions over the years. You do not need the dust and impact covers to store a PMag. You'll see on the wall here we have one of the original Gen 1 PMags that's been stored for 10 years, loaded, and every once in a while we'll take those rounds out, put live rounds in, shoot that thing, reload it, and put it back into the storage place. We have M2 MREV PMags, and we have M3s in pretty much every magazine that we make that goes through environmental cycling. So temperatures from below zero up to about 150, 160. We don't go full way to 180 with those long-term storage mags, but basically they're temperature cycled over the years. Every once in a while we pull them out, shoot them, record the results, measure the feed lips, load them back up, and put them back in storage. So no covers, you don't need the covers. The covers are dust and impact covers, so it keeps gummy bears and stuff out of, if you put them in your kit bag, out of the magazine, and also if you're going to do things like an aerial delivery or a speedball, or throw them in an ammo cam and bounce them around the back of a GMV, chuck them off a building, that sort of thing. The little bit of extra protection removes the pressure from the round stack off of the feed lips, not to prevent spreading, but to prevent the jackhammering of the round stack against the inside of the feed lips in the case of a severe impact, and that's what that's for. So, in any case, you don't need the covers to store PMags, any of them. Moving forward. See the 20 round Gen M3, we start working on the 20 and the 10 very shortly after the 30. Those things come out. Once again, we transition back to a curved geometry to optimize that round stack and work with all platforms. It could be finicky in the straight mag. The PMag 40 also comes out finally. We see all the way back early in the day, there was in 2007, 2008 time frame, there were some prototypes of the 40. So we had the concept, but we really needed to understand the manufacturing techniques to get a magazine that long that was that reliable. And it took up to here until we were 100% sure we could get that out there. So the 40 right now runs with just as high a cyclic rates as the 30 and is just as reliable. You'll see a bunch of numbers here on the wall as far as test numbers. So the endurance testing, the initial 36,000 rounds here, the initial 24,000 rounds here, 0 stoppages, the whole thing, 450,000 rounds of total internal testing for various products. And you'll see some government test numbers up here as well. Those are pretty exciting to us and pretty significant. They may not be as as significant to everyone else, but we're pretty proud of those numbers. That brings us along. We've got, of course, you saw the initial LRSRs way back in the day. We've got the Gen M3 LRSRs out here. Took all the Gen M3 improvements into the LRSR line. Along with that, we've got some additional translucent materials. Once again, we went through probably another dozen around the time that the PMag Gen M3 was released. Into 2013. 2013 was the big Colorado thing. So. the Boulder Airlift Special Edition magazine, all that stuff during that time, the Free Colorado magazines, getting magazines to the folks in Colorado during a period of unprecedented demand as the legislation, which we fought pretty hard to try and stop, but unfortunately were unsuccessful. We got those to the Colorado residents before that legislation took effect. We also have one of the things that we use with the legislators, showing them kind of the futility of doing any kind of magazine ban and the ability to very easily change magazines, so they weren't accomplishing anything, as well as losing the jobs and all the other things, some of the points that we made. So one of those that we used actually on the Senate floor is up there. The PMag 30 SPC hits the street as well in 2013 in that 6.8 mag, so that goes out with the LWRCI 6.8 rifles. And right around this time we start playing with a bunch of different platforms. So we've got things going on with the AR platforms, the 308 AR platforms, the 30G, things like that, and it's time to start expanding the PMag line, and we start looking at other platforms. We also start looking at other capacities. We revisited the quad stack at this time, so we wanted to be able to feed 60 rounds as reliable as possible, and we had been playing with different designs over the years with the quad stack, but we kind of took a hard look at everything and said, you know, it may be time to actually do this and try this in a drum. And everybody was really skeptical of the whole drum thing. And you'll see on the wall, the first drum was a 50-round drum because it would be a lot easier to feed 50 than it is to feed 60 out of a drum magazine. But we took a look at the package that was, and also 60 rounds just as a nice, more round number. So the 50-round prototype is up here, but the 60 is what we eventually did release. Glock magazines, we also started with Glocks at this time, Glock stacked like cordwood in the test rooms, so we started cranking through some R&D with that and started the Glock magazine programs, revisited the AICS program, so we started with the bolt guns to go along with the hunter stocks. So the first 5/6 round magazine goes there, and the AKs, of course. So the AK Mo, the first printed prototype, is here. All that stuff comes to fruition in 2015 timeframe. Around 2015, you also start to see another round of government testing of various magazines, which included quite a bit of the commercial magazines that were out there. So pretty much it's a laundry list of who's who that was tested. Gen M3 PMag comes out on top. 0 magazine-related stoppages in the entire test. Only ones not to have bolt-over base failures, things like that. We also do the least damage to feed ramps and to bolt faces, or excuse me, chamber faces, with M855A1 ammunition, which is pretty hard on those areas with conventional magazine geometry. The very same geometry that we use to improve feeding and to reduce the energy that's stripped off the bolt carrier ends up getting translated into increased performance with M855A1, because that same thing, avoiding using the feed ramps, translates into less impacts on the feed ramps and better performance. We get the PMag 30 AKM3 around this time, so we always intended to do the metal reinforced variant when we did the Mo, doing the same thing with the AK-74 mag, so you'll be seeing that Mo first and then the M3 after that. The drum's out, we've got the full line AICS magazines, the Glock magazines hit the street, and we come up with sand. So you'll notice that we went from the full color spectrum in the early days, and we've got mostly black here. M2 products still continue to be delivered in colors for years, but the issues with colored materials, they're harder to QC, and because of the orientation of some of the things that are required with conventional technologies to color them, we're just not as happy with performance of the colored magazines. In some, you get 10,000 that are absolutely perfect, and one that you can't tell that becomes more susceptible to certain rough handling procedures. So we've been working the entire time to find a way to do mags molded in color that had the same or better performance than black. And the sand material was an evolutionary step in that direction. The sand material, it's not absent of color, but it is a colored magazine with some interesting material technologies and tweaks that uses the same performance characteristics, almost exactly the same. And in fact, it's very difficult to tell one from the other in other performance characteristics. Chemical compatibility, drop in impact, the sand improves actually over black, but it's not in the noise. It's a significant number, but it's not huge. When you get over to 2016, All this test data is being digested, so we see a lot of, there's some stuff going on behind the scenes here. There's some additional SOCOM testing with the PMAG Gen M3 in some of the programs, M855A1, and some dirty conditions, some suppressed conditions that we obviously did extremely well in versus the USGI. At the same time, we start working with some of these different colorant processes and different materials, and we come out with the MCT program comes online. So we start testing all different variants of that, the ability to use new colorant technology to get materials that are as strong or stronger than black in colors, and that's what MCT is. So fantastic performing material, and we can do the range of colors. This particular color, I know a lot of people, why didn't you make FDE? Well, there's a particular requirement called the Small Arms Weapons Neutral Program. That's the PM soldier weapons kind of thing, hang at Picatinny Arsenal. This is what we need for the soldier enhancement kind of signature reduction program. So the idea that black is bad, which it is for signature in all environments. Black is a terrible color, so painting magazines is a great idea. Painting guns is a great idea. But if you can mold the magazine in color, and you don't have to put an external finish on it, it reduces a lot of issues. So molded in color is obviously ideal, and that's what the MCT magazine gives you. MCT stands for medium coyote tan. The two colors that are the color range that's acceptable for the Small Arms Weapons Neutral Program is Coyote 498 to Light Coyote 481, or somewhere around there. I'll probably screw up the Pantones, but they're the 595C colors. But we are medium coyote tan. We're not very creative here, but it's right in the middle pretty much of those two coyotes, so it's medium coyote. All right, along with that, the rest of the Glock line starts to flesh out. The PMAG 30 AUS for the stair, we're working with Talus for the stair for what was previously the AUG platform, basically, for a particular military customer. An end user had requested that, so that's where that program came from. Everybody's, well, there's not that many AUGs in the United States. That's accurate. But that's where that program came from. We've got the long action magazines out here, the 30 AK-74 MOAs out there. And now we have some additional testing. So we've got some additional testing based on the results of the previous testing, the 2 rounds of testing that were there, and during this one, that's basically where the United States Marine Corps decided that the Gen M3 PMAG has vastly superior performance to the other magazines tested in all of their platforms with all of the ammunition, and that's where you see the adoption that we're so proud of and so happy to hear. So yes, the Gen M3 PMAG Mag 556 window in black and MCT. MCT probably going to be the one mostly procured, but that is the magazine for the United States Marine Corps now. The USGI EPM magazine, which is the current existing program from Picatinny, that program is utilized, relegated to training only, and the training full up go to war mag is the Mag 556 MCT. All right, from there, obviously that brings us up right to SHOT Show. That covers the history, but over here we have basically the provenance wall, what we call here, PMAGs with a story. Some various Gen 1 PMAGs from all over the place. So you have some ODA stuff, some Asymmetric Warfare Group magazines, one of Pat Rogers' original magazines out of his kit. We have there's the Gen 1 PMAG that's been loaded for 10 years. It actually hangs out with Drake to this day, and you can see the 077 date out there. So in July of 2007, that's when that magazine was loaded. Another one of the NSW G-Mags from those guys from running around Afghanistan with a little note of provenance there that he has sent along with that magazine, Missions in Afghanistan. And then just some magazines from Army guys, Marine guys that saw a lot of interesting times with these magazines and made it through some interesting moments in their life with some IEDs and all kind of crazy stuff going on, lots of firefights, multiple combat deployments. Put those up here. And then kind of the pop culture PMAG that's up here, and this is happens to be, so you may see if you're a fan of the AMC show The Walking Dead, you'll see a lot of PMAGs on that program, some UBRs and other Magpul gear and accessories. Those guys big PMAG fans, and they signed one of the PMAGs for us. So we have Norman Reedus on one side and Andrew Lincoln on the other one, so Rick and Daryl on the signatures on that one. So that covers pretty much the entire display. Of course, there's a lot of text up here that I can't get into in the probably 20 minutes that I've taken so far of your time, but it's an interesting display. If you get a chance to come and see it during SHOT Show, please do. We have some flyers that you can take your own version of the wall home with you. We'll also, during the year, you'll see this at NRA show. So if you come see us in Atlanta at the NRA show, you'll be able to see this entire wall there. And right now, it's entirely possible that this ends up in the National Firearms Museum after we're done with that, so you'll be able to visit it there at the NRA headquarters. We're going to do a video program as well on us to kind of go through some of these magazines, and we do Magazine Mondays. So if you keep watching our Facebook feed, Instagram feed, every Monday for the entire year, you're going to see a different magazine from this wall with a little more detailed story about what's going on with that magazine, why it's important, and why it was on the wall. And we'll do those magazines every Monday all the way through the year, and that'll be some additional information even that we couldn't fit on the wall. So it's another opportunity to find out some neat stuff about Magpul history and the history of the PMAG. So, to make a long story endless, that's where we're at the 10-year anniversary of the PMAG. Thank you for your time and attention to take a look at this. Please do stop by if you get a chance, and we'll see you out there.